Hello everyone, welcome back to Code with Beto. I'm super excited to bring you this very cool video and in which we are going to learn how to create an application that is going to allow us to talk with ChatGPT. And as you can see here, we have the demo. So as soon as I start pressing this red button, we are going to start recording our voice or just speaking to the phone, and the phone is going to recognize our voice, and then we're going to send this message to the backend. So we're going to be creating as well a backend with NestJS. It's going to be pretty fun. Now, once we send this message to the backend, ChatGPT is going to reply, but we are going to be using as well a Google Cloud API called text to speech to convert the response from GPT to an MP3 file and then send that to the client so that we can play that recording on the mobile application. So let's see the demo. All right, I'm pressing and then I can start talking. Okay. Hi, ChatGPT. Can you just say hi to the audience and present yourself? And yeah, thank you. So I released, and then on the left side, we can see
in today's video, you'll learn how to build an app that lets you converse with me, ChatGPT. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. And if you're looking to become a React Native expert, head over to codewithbeto.dev to check out our comprehensive React Native course, or our React with TypeScript course with a super discount, including templates and free examples. Now, let's dive into the demo.
All right. So as you can see, on the left side, I have my terminal where I'm hosting my server, NestJS application, which it's a framework to build Node.js based applications for backend development. So let's send another message. Thanks for your kind introduction.
You're welcome. I'm here to help and provide a great learning experience. If you have any questions or need assistance with anything, feel free to ask. Let's make this demo engaging and informative.
Cool, thank you. Just as a demo, can you tell us who Steve Jobs was?
Steve Jobs West is not a known figure. It is possible that you may be referring to either Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple Inc., or Kanye West, the American rapper and fashion designer. Please provide more context or clarify your question so that I can assist you accurately.
Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs. All right. And this response is very large.
Steve Jobs was an American business magnate, industrial designer,
I'm going to reload so that we don't have to listen to all that. But yeah, so we have also this replay last message.
Steve Jobs was an American business magnate.
And if I press it, as you can see, it's going to play the message again. Okay, so please tell us who was Steve Jobs in a short sentence.
Steve Jobs was the co-founder of Apple Inc. and a visionary leader in the technology industry.
All right, thank you for your response. You have been very helpful. Now let's start with this video. All right.
You're welcome. I'm glad I could assist you. Let's dive right into the video and start exploring how to build an app that allows us to converse with ChatGPT. Okay. If you have any questions or need any help throughout the video, feel...
Yeah, so maybe we need to add a stop button here. But as you can see, this is working just fine. On the background, we are just sending the text to the backend, and we are using a dependency to do that. So to recognize the voice and then translate it to text and then send it to the backend and do, the translation, and then from text to speech and send that MP3 back to the user. So this is what we're going to be building, guys. So if you like this video, please make sure to subscribe if you haven't already and give it a like. And also guys, as always, this code is going to be available to you for free at codewithbeto.dev. So if you go to codewithbeto.dev/project, you are going to find this Talk GPT project. And then if you click here, you're going to find dependencies, videos, and if you scroll all the way down, you can see the links for GitHub and download it. And yeah, once you are here, you can check out the React Native course. If you want to become a master in React Native and if you want to support the channel, check out the React Native course and you are going to become a master. This course is very complete, and also I'm actively updating it with the latest release of Expo SDK and all the good stuff. And also I'm currently working as well on this React with TypeScript course. So if you want to become a master in React with TypeScript, go to codewithbeto.dev and check out this React with TypeScript course. We have a cool deal for you right now. It's just for early birds because this is a pre-sale. But as soon as we finish this course, it's going to be a little more expensive. So if you want to take advantage of this opportunity, you can enroll now. Now, that being said, guys, let's start with this video. Okay, guys, so before we actually jumped into the code, I want to talk a little bit about the architecture that we're gonna be doing for this application. So this seems like a very simple application, but it's a very complex application under the hood because we are gonna be dealing with a server, and also we're gonna be communicating with APIs providers like OpenAI for ChatGPT and also Google text-to-speech. So let's see how this is gonna be working. So we need a client-side application, right? And here we have this device, which represents the application that we're gonna be creating with React Native, right? Now, for the server, because we need to communicate with OpenAI and Google text-to-speech, and also if you want to add more complexity to this application, it might be a good idea to have a server so that you don't need to handle everything on the client side. And also when we are dealing with these APIs that we need to pay as developers to use them, it's very recommended that you handle this logic on the server so that you don't expose anything to the client that could be used against you. So for example, a client could abstract your API keys or something like that. So you don't want that. That's why we are gonna create this server. Now for the server, we're gonna be using NestJS, And NestJS is a framework that allows us to build applications, backend or server applications using Node.js. By default, it uses TypeScript, so it's really nice. And also, it's a very popular framework that it's very scalable. Okay, so with that in mind, we're gonna be communicating then to OpenAI and Google. So the way this is going to work is that we need to translate the voice of the user into text. Now we could use, speech to text from Google to do that, but it's going to be expensive for us. Thankfully, the devices that nowadays the users have can handle this on the client side. So we're going to be on React Native, we're going to be using a dependency to translate from speech to text. And this is going to be working locally, so we don't have to pay anyone. And this computing is going to be on the client side. So we are going to get the text from this. So once we have the text, let me just say here text. Once we have the text, we can send this text to the server, all right? So we are going to be sending this text to the server, and in the server, we're going to be handling the conversation with GPT. So we're going to say, okay, ChatGPT, here's a new message, and this message is going to be sent to OpenAI. Of course, we need to keep track of the conversation, not just the last message, but the history of the conversation. We're going to keep things simple here. I'm just going to be handling one conversation at a time. So when I start my server, it's going to be just dealing with one conversation to keep things simple, but you can, integrate a lot of stuff. So once ChatGPT responds to us, we're going to get text, right? So we're going to have text at this point. And with this text, what we want to do is make another request. In this case, we're going to be using Google. We're going to send the text here. So I'm going to say text, and then Google API is going to reply to the server with an MP3 file. So let's say MP3 file. Basically, it's going to be an audio for this text. Once we have this audio on the server, we can send it back to the client. And let me delete this. We're going to send this MP3 file back to the client. And once we have this on the client, what we can do is just play this MP3 file, which is going to be the latest message that we send to ChatGPT. Of course, because I want to keep things simple, I'm just going to be dealing with the last file. Of course, we could expand the functionality of this application, maybe by adding a database and then also using something like S3 from AWS to store all the audios that we're going to be having for the user, like the history. But this is going to be very complex to do in one video. That's why I'm going to try to keep things simple. But if you want to scale this application, you can take this as a base and then scale from here. It's going to be fairly easy. Depending on what kind of functionality you want to have. But yeah, if you want to provide, for example, records of the conversations that the user has created, you can do so. But in this case, what I'm going to do, instead of having a bucket like S3 or a database, I'm just going to save the last reply on the client side. So this message that we have here, I'm going to save it locally so that we have the feature of replay. As you can see here we have this button and we can replay the last message. But as soon as we create this flow again, we send another message to ChatGPT, to the server, we get a response. As soon as we get another file, I'm going to replace the latest one. Or yeah, so the last one is going to be replaced for the latest one. And yeah, so this is what we're going to be doing. We are going to need to create a server. We're going to need to create a front-end application using React Native, and then using OpenAI and Google TTS. And yeah, so basically this is what we're going to be doing, guys. I just wanted to make sure that we are on the same page and we know what we're going to be doing in the role of each part of the code or each part of this application. So let's get started. Okay, guys, so let's start by creating the front end, which is going to be the React Native application. I'm going to start by creating a new Expo project. We're going to be using Expo. So let's go ahead, and now that I'm here on the desktop, I'm going to run the command npx create Expo app, and I'm going to use TypeScript. So I'm going to select template, and then I just want the blank TypeScript without navigation. So let's select this one. And the name for this one is going to be tutorial GPT or Talk GPT. Hit enter, and now let's wait a little bit. All right, guys, so the app is ready. So let's go ahead and access this folder, or I can just simply open this on Visual Studio Code by saying code tutorial Talk GPT. Okay, guys, so here we have the React Native application. Right, as you can see here, this is just normal stuff, but in this case we have TypeScript support, which is really nice. So let's go ahead and run this application. As you can see here, we are using npm, but I don't really like to use npm. So what I'm going to do is just delete this package log.json as well as the node modules and just run yarn. Basically, we're going to be switching to yarn. Now we need to wait a little bit. While we wait, let's go to code with Beto and grab the dependencies that we need for this GPT frontend. So as you can see here, frontend, we're going to be using React Native Voice, which is a library that allows us to translate the voice of the user to text. Okay, so this voice is going to do that. And then we're going to be using Expo AV. This is going to allow us to play media like videos and audio in this case. So to play the MP3 file, we're going to be using this Expo AV, and then Expo file system. File system is going to just allow us to save the last message MP3 file into the device, so that when the user opens the application again, it's going to have access to the last message that ChatGPT sent it. Okay, so now let's just copy these dependencies and then move this out of the way and paste it here. Right, so let's wait a little bit until this is done. All right, and that's it. So I'm going to be pre-building this application. The reason for that is because I believe that this React Native voice dependency is going to be using native code. So in order for this to work on the simulator, we need to make the build. So to make the build, let's run npx expo pre-build. But I just want to pre-build this for iOS. So let's say platform iOS. And if I hit enter, they're going to be asking me for my bundle. I'm just going to select the default, hit enter. This is going to start creating the native code for iOS, as you can see here. Now we need to wait a little bit until this is done. While we are creating this project, what we can do is select the app.tsx and actually start working a little bit on the UI for this application. So let's just copy what we have here on the right side. Just going to delete this text and say that this is going to be Talk GPT. Of course, this is going to be a very basic UI. We don't want to, waste a lot of time just working on the UI. Okay, and yeah, so this is compiled, as you can see here. The folder is created, and now we can run this on the simulator by saying npx expo run iOS. Okay, and I'm using the other port for this application, so I'm just going to cancel and stop the other server. Okay, I stopped the other server. I'm going to run npx expo run iOS. This is going to create the build for this application on my simulator. Okay, so then I'm going to have another text here. So here I'm going to change this text for, press and hold this button to record, like the instructions for the user to use this application. And yeah, so I'm going to add just style to this text here. I'm going to say font size of 32 and then font weight bold. And because I want some space between this and the text below, I'm going to say margin bottom of 30. Oops. I'm going to delete this. Okay, so as you can see here on the right side, it's asking me if I want to open this application. So I'm going to say open. Then let's add this margin bottom here. All right. Okay, and this is working just fine, as you can see here. Yeah, so let's continue with this UI. I'm going to create another text here. And this text is just going to be your message, because we want to show the message that the user is going to be sending, right? Now, for the subtitle that we have here, I'm going to create a style. Well, I can just copy a style that I have here. So I'm going to add this style here, equal to, and it's going to be this style, right? Now, this is not what I wanted. Let me change it super quickly. Okay. All right, so this is going to be the style for the message, and we can have maybe some spacing between these. So what I'm going to do is change this container by adding a padding so that we have some space on the left and right. And the background color is going to be white, so I'm going to delete that one. All right, let's delete this status bar, and also I'm going to create a button that is going to be in charge of replaying or playing the last message. So let's import this from React Native, and also I'm going to be using a pressable, and this pressable is going to be the button that the user is going to be pressing to record new messages. So let's say that the title for this is going to be reply last message. And whenever we press this, we want to reply the last message. But of course, we don't have anything yet. So what I'm going to do here is just try to work a little bit on the UI, and then we can start adding the functionality. Let's create now the pressable. Pressable can have components inside. Like in this case, it's going to be hold to speak. So hit save, and then we can add a style, right? So for this button, what I'm going to do is going to create a style super quickly here. The style is going to look something like this. Now this border color is going to be changing depending if the user is pressing, right? So we need a variable to do that. But for now, let's delete this and just say light gray, right? And that's how it's going to look. All right, so this is looking good. This is a pressable, of course, and whenever we press this, we need to handle the recording of the audio. All right, so let's try to add this functionality and change this to be a light green when we are pressing, so that the user has some feedback. Also, let me just add a quick style to this by saying margin vertical of 10, and maybe a little, font size more like 17, for example. Okay, so this is going to be the message. So let's go ahead and create a variable here. This is going to be called border color, and set border color equal to React. I'm just gonna say use state, and this is going to be by default light gray. So we can specify here that this is going to be just between light gray and light green. And if I hit save, we should be able to now change between these two values. So if we go back to this pressable, and instead of having this hard-coded color, I'm going to say border color. Okay, and now it's gray. And the pressable component has an onPressIn event here. And what we can do here is set the border color to, in this case, light green. So when the user starts pressing, we're going to set this to be green. And when the user releases, so on press out, we want to basically do the same. So I can just copy this and change this to be, and if I put my autocomplete here, you can see that we have these two values, which is really nice because we specified that this is going to be a union type. So light gray in this case. And if I hit save, now let's try this out. Whenever I press, you can see that now this is green, and when I release, it's going to be gray. Cool, so this is working. Now, what we can do, what we want to do here is actually start recognizing when we press in, and whenever we press out, we want to stop recognizing. So how can we do that? So in order to do that, we're going to be using the audio library. But of course, this library, it's a little, I wouldn't say it's hard to use, but it's going to have like a lot of code in order to deal with all the cases that we can have. For example, when the user starts recording, the result of the recording, and stuff like that. So to abstract a little bit of this logic, I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to create some hooks, right? So in this folder hooks, I'm going to create a new file that is going to be in charge of dealing with this library. So I'm going to say use voice recognition.ts6. And in here, what I want to do is import some things from React. But before I do that, I want to import voice from, and if you remember, we have this voice from React Native voice. All right, so here we have this dependency. Now this is going to be a custom hook, guys. So also when we are importing this dependency, we have a lot of methods that we can use, as you can see here. Speech end event, and we can access these events so we can have full control of the speech. So I just want to grab the error event in the case that we have an error, and also results event. So let's grab this results event. And yeah, so let's try to abstract this logic here. I want to have a variable to hold the state of this recording. So let's create an interface because we are using TypeScript. And this is going to be my interface state. And we're going to have some things like, for example, when the user, when we have recognized or what we have recognized. So let's call this recognized. And this is going to be a string. Then pitch, string, error. So we are going to be handling everything here. It's going to be of type string and string as well. Started, it's going to be string. Then results. Results is going to be an array of strings actually. So results is going to be an array of string like that. We are also going to have partial results. And these things basically are like what we have at the end. And partial results is going to be like what we understand, because, you know, most of the time this is not going to be very accurate, especially, you know, if the user doesn't speak English very well like me. So we're going to have some partial results. And then finally, I'm going to add a variable so that we know when the user is recording. I'm going to call this recording, and this is going to be a Boolean, so that we can keep track and update the UI accordingly, depending if we are recording or not. Okay, so this is going to be the interface. This is how it looks. Now let's go ahead and create a custom hook down here. So let's export const use voice recognition. This is going to be a function. Now, if you are not familiar with custom hooks, basically when we say use at the beginning of a function, in this case, it means that this is going to be a hook, and React is going to run this hook before everything else when we are using it. So let's initialize the state. I'm going to say state. So this hook is going to be in charge of handling the state of the voice, right? So let's use the hook use state and pass here the type. Now, in this case, I want to have a initial state. So we can simply just copy and paste this here, just initializing these variables with empty values. Cool, so this is how it's going to look. Now we can actually start adding the functions that come with this voice, library here. So let's go ahead and do that here. The first one is going to be reset state. So I'm going to say reset state. This is going to be very useful because whenever we want to delete what we have recognized, we need to call this function. So let's use a callback here. And this callback is going to set the state to whatever we had before. So I can just copy this here and paste it here. So this is basically just setting the state as it was before. All right, and use callback, it's going to have a, dependency array as well. And this is going to be depending on the set state. Now, I think I have an error here. I think this is after, yeah. So after these curly braces, we have this array of dependencies. Yeah, and this is how it looks. So this is going to reset the state. So let's just copy this one and paste another function down here. This function is going to be called start recognizing. And it's going to look like this, and this callback is going to be asynchronous. I'm going to delete this here. What I want to do when I start recognizing, it's going to be, I think I'm missing something here. Okay, so we have this reset state function. I'm just going to copy this and paste it down here, but I'm going to change the name. In this case, we want to create a function that is going to start recognizing. So this is going to be in charge of start recognizing. And this function needs to be asynchronous. So the first thing that I want to do when we start recognizing, I'm going to delete this, it's actually reset the state, because it could be that we had something before. So if we reset the state, we are going to delete the messages that we had before, right? Now here I'm going to have a try catch. And this try catch is going to look something like this. In the case that we have an error, I'm just going to put it on the console here. And inside this try catch, I want to actually start using my voice library. So I'm going to say voice.start. And if I just press dot, you can see that we have a lot of events that we can access from this voice. So let's say start. In this case, this is going to start, and we can specify the local here, which means the language that we are going to be dealing with. In this case, it's going to be English, but you can change this to be Spanish or whatever your language is. And then if we come back here, we need to reset state here, put this as dependency. Okay. And then, yeah, so this is going to start recognizing. Then we can do the same thing for stop recognizing. We have, as you may guess by now, a stop recognizing here. So I'm going to create another function that is going to be just handling this stop. Once we have stopped, maybe we want to have another to cancel recording. So I'm just going to create another here. And these functions need to be inside of this. Oops. And these functions need to be inside of here. Yeah. Okay, so that's for canceling. Then we have other one that is going to destroy the recognizer. Basically, you know, it's going to stop everything and reset the state. Very important here. And now we have all these methods that we are actually not using at this point. And also we have this state. So let's return these methods as well as the state and the set state. But how we are going to be dealing with the state changes. So in order to do that, we need to have a use effect. So I'm going to create a use effect here. And this effect is going to be just listening for voice events. Okay. And let's just create the first one here. We're going to have things like, for example, voice on. And if I type just on, you can see all the events that we can access from this voice. So for example, when the speech starts, what we want to do here, well, we're gonna have a callback function, and we're going to have an event here as well. So I'm gonna say just any for now. And I just want to access this event to update my state. If you remember, we have this variable state that has all these things, so that when we are using this this hook, we can access all these things depending on what's going on, right? So when the speech starts, I want to set the state to be equal to the previous state. But in this case, I want to, set everything that we had before, but I'm going to say started equal to, I don't know, yeah. And here we can put just whatever you want. For example, I'm going to say started and just add this emoji. Then I'm going to say it's recording equal to true at this point. And yeah, so whenever we start recording, we are going to trigger this listener and we are going to update the state so that we can update the UI as well. This way, we're going to have a lot of control over what's going on, and we can update easily the UI and do all that kind of stuff. So let's say on speech recognize, and what I want to do here is another callback, and then set the state as well. In this case, accessing as well the previous state, I want to say that this is going to be equal to previous state, and they just say recognized. and changing this to be this emoji, right? And we can do stuff like that. Of course, I need to pass quotes here, and this is how it's going to look. Okay, so now I'm going to just paste these events. Basically, they are going to be doing the same. But for example, if we have an error, I just want to update my state saying that we have an error, passing the error that we are having, and set is recording equal to false. On speech results, we want to set the results, as you can see here, to the value that we are getting. And here we are typing these results from these types that we are importing here. So these are types, or yeah, types that we can use here. And then we have, updating the state, these events, like on a speech partial results, we're going to set that to the partial results. And basically that's why we added these fields on the state, because we have these, because we have all these events that can go inside these fields, right? Finally, we have this on a speech volume change, and we're going to set the pitch in this case. And finally, guys, this is very important. We need to clean up whenever we unmount this component. In this case, we are not going to unmount it until we close the application. But if you have this in a component, whenever you unmount that component, it's a good idea that you have here the destroy, and then we can say voice.remove all listeners. Okay, so this is going to make sure that we have everything clean and clear. And yeah, so this is all we need to do here. We are going to be updating the state from this hook, and then we have all these methods that we can access, and this is going to be just now very easy to use. If we go back to the app, and now we can say, for example, const, and then I'm just gonna say use voice recognition, and we can start utilizing, whatever we need. In this case, I'm going to use the state, start recognizing, stop recognizing, destroy recognizer, and that's all we need for now. So let's grab this state. And one cool thing that I like to do when I'm debugging or developing, I can just duplicate this text and put the state. But the state is an object, right? So what we can do is say JSON.stringify and set the state. And if I hit save, you can see that we have the initial values. Of course, that looks ugly, but if we pass here a replacer in a space of 2, this is going to look like that. So now we can see what's going on all the time, right? And then whenever we start pressing this button, I want to start recognizing. So I'm going to say start recognizing. And whenever I press out, I want to stop recognizing. Stop recognizing. And yeah, so, and then after we have the result, maybe we can have another function that is going to be handle submit. So let's save this for now and just try this out. Okay, so something went wrong. Okay, guys, now something very important here. This app has crashed because it's attempting to access privacy sensitive data without the usage description. Now, because we are trying to save documents and also access the microphone of the user, we need to basically ask for permissions. So to ask for permissions, let's go to the app.json. And here I'm going to go all the way down here after web, and I'm going to add these plugins. In this case, I'm adding this React Native voice plugin. And here we are going to need microphone permissions and speech recognition permissions. Now you can change this for your custom whatever message you want to use. But in this case, let's just save this. And what I want to do now is actually stop this, clear my terminal, and rebuild this again. So I'm going to say Expo rebuild, platform iOS. Let's wait a little bit and then run this on the simulator. So I have a shortcut for this, Expo run iOS. This is like a alias that I have set up on my computer, but the command is going to be npx expo run iOS. So it's the same thing. Now I'm going to minimize this here. And let's see if this is going to work. Now, one thing that I want to make sure is that the device is not on silent mode. So let's make sure that this is, and we also have some volume here. All right, and let's try this again. So I'm going to hold, and now I have this alert that is telling me that we want to access. So let's allow everything. And now we have this information that is changing every time that I'm, talking. But in this case, we have like a bug here because I wasn't pressing. So let's hold. And as soon as I, leave this button, we're going to stop recording. Now, of course, this is shaking a lot. Maybe I can put this after we have this pressable. So I'm going to put it here, hit save. All right, let's try this again. All right, testing, 1, 2, 3, testing. Okay, and this is jumping. But yeah, so this is working. As you can see here, we have the results. Okay, and once we have these results, I can just stop and grab these results from my state and send it to the backend and do all the crazy stuff that we want to do. Cool. So now, yeah. So what I'm thinking is that maybe I can just try to create this handle submit. Okay, guys, so now let's try to create this function handle submit, because at this point we have all we need, right? We just need to send this text message that we are grabbing from the user to the backend, and then we need to handle that on the backend. So, well, another thing that I'm thinking now is that we also need to save the file that we're going to be receiving. Remember that we're going to have this replay last message function or functionality. So let's go ahead and create this function here. I'm going to say, in this case, const handle submit. This is going to be an arrow function, as well async, because here we're going to be dealing with the request and all that. So handle submit, it's going to look something like this. The first thing that I want to do is actually validate if we don't have anything on the results. So here on the results, you can see that we have, text. But if we don't have anything, and if you pay attention, this is an array. So I'm going to grab the position 0. If we don't have something here, I'm just going to return early so that we prevent making a request to ChatGPT and our backend and waste of resources. Now, after this, we want to try. So let's create a try catch. If something goes wrong, put it on the console. And yeah, so what I want to do here is actually fetch the data. So we're going to send this message, and then we're going to receive the audio, right? So fetch the audio, and then this audio is going to be a blob. If you don't know what is a blob, basically blob stands for binary large object. And this kind of data is usually used when we are dealing with files like videos, like MP3 in this case, images as well. So from the server here. Okay, so fetch the audio from the server. Now, to make the fetch request, I want to create another function so that we don't have everything here. And what we can do here is maybe create a new folder called utils, and then create a new file called fetch audio.ts. Right? Now in this file, I'm going to create my fetch. So let's call this fetch audio. This is going to be like a helper function. It's going to be async. And we are going to have actually a text as parameter of type string. So we're going to pass the text. Let me close this so that we can see better. And what I want to do here is just grab the response from the server. So we're going to be doing just a simple fetch request. Now, in this case, we don't have the endpoint yet, so I'm just going to leave an empty string. And then we need to specify some options. This is going to be a post request. So the method is going to be post. And then we need to specify as well some headers. because we are dealing with um, content type and all that. In this case, it's going to be application JSON. So content type application JSON. Finally, we need to pass something on the body, which is going to be the text. So I'm going to change this to be stringify and then pass the text. Okay, so basically I'm changing this to be a string, and now this is the same as saying text. So this is simpler. We're just passing the text, and then with the response, I want to return it. So I'm going to say await response. Remember that we are going to get a binary large object. So in this case, I'm going to say blob. Okay, and then just hit save. Now, this is not going to work yet. We don't have an endpoint, but what I want to do here is use my endpoint. In this case, I'm going to say process.end. And what I want to do here is just create an end file to store my endpoint. So let's create this end file. And I'm going to name this, I don't know, Expo public, and then my endpoint. This is going to be equal to my endpoint. Of course, I don't have it yet, but I'm going to put it here in a moment. So what I want to do now is just copy this, go back here and paste it. Now, of course, TypeScript is going to yell at me because this might be undefined, but if I just put an exclamation point, this is going to work just fine. Now, make sure, guys, that you are using at least Expo 49, because these environment variables are just compatible with Expo 49 and above. That's why I'm using this. I don't need to install anything. This is really nice. So yeah, this should be working once we have the endpoint. Now let's go back to the app. We were working on the handle submit, and what we can do here inside this, I can say const audio blob. This is going to be equal to await fetch audio, which is our function, and then this is going to take the text, right? So we can grab it from the state dot results at position 0. Remember that this is an array. And yeah, so that's it. Once we have this blob, we can do whatever we want with this file. So the way we're going to be handling this file is going to be using the file reader from JavaScript. So this is going to look something like this: const reader equal to new file reader. Okay, and if you are not familiar with file reader, basically it's going to let web applications asynchronously read the content of files or raw data stored on the user's computer using file or blob objects to specify the file, blah, blah, blah. So basically blobs, which is what we are dealing with. So what we are going to do here, it's just initialize this reader, and then we can say what we can access some methods, like for example onload, and then we are going to create a function here. This is going to be an async function that is going to get an event. So I'm going to say e, and then this event, we can check it, right? So event.target and type of event.target.result, it's equal to string. So basically we are going to have the audio on base 64, which is a super large string. That's why I'm checking this string here. And then that is going to be the data, right? So we can grab this audio data from the event.target.result. But this data, guys, is going to look something like this. I'm just going to put it here. This is how the data is going to look like. This is a super large string that contains the base 64 of the file, but the base 64 is going to be here after this comma. So we don't want this thing here. We just want whatever we have after the comma. That is the actual data, the audio data. So from the result, what I can do is just use the split function or method and split this string like this. So we are splitting this in two parts, and we are going to grab this part. So after the split, I'm going to grab the position 1. This is going to become an array. So if we put brackets here, this is how it looks. Position 0, position 1. That's why we are grabbing position 1. All right, and that is the data. Okay, so once we have the data, what I can do is save it. So to save the data, we need to, save data. This is going to be an audio. So at this point, we are going to be using the file system from Expo. So let's go up here and import that here. We can import all as file system. And then now that we are here, we are going to be using audio as well from Expo AV to play that audio once we have it. Okay. All right. So, and one thing that we can do here is set some options from audio. We can access like set audio mode async. And this is going to allow us to basically modify some settings from the user, like for example, allows recording iOS equal to false, then stays active in background equal to false. And then, for example, plays in silent mode. This is very important that you put it to true, because otherwise you're going to spend 2 hours wondering why you can't hear anything. The reason for that is because we had silent mode. So if we set this variable, this is going to play the sound no matter what, no matter if the user has this silent. Okay. All right. And then we have, for example, should dock Android. This is true. And then play through air blah 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 equal to false. So I just grabbed this. From the documentation. But yeah, important thing here is just play in silent mode for iOS, I would say. All right, so let's use this file system. Let's go down here, and what I want to do, save the data, right? But let's create a function that is going to be in charge of doing that. So if we go to the utilities folder, we can create a new file that is going to be write audio to file.ts. Okay, and I'm just going to copy this name. Close the browser for now. Let's create this function. This is going to be an async function as well. And we are going to get the audio data as parameter. This is going to be of type string. Remember that this is base 64, which is a super large string. Okay, so once we have this, we can actually just save this. But before we save this, we need to give it a name. And the name that I'm going to be using is going to be temp or temporary file mp3. This is the extension. And before we do that, we can save this in a path. So this is going to be the path, but we cannot simply just pass this string. We need to generate, we need to use the file system in this case and say document, and I need to import this. So I'm going to say import all as file system from Expo file system. Okay, and now we can access this system.document directory. And if I hover, you can see that pointing to the directory where the user documents for this app. So we are going to save this in the documents. So we can just concatenate this, right? So the file is going to be on the documents temp, and the name is going to be temp.mp3. Now let's actually save it. This is just the path. We need to save it. So let's say file system dot write async, write string async as a string, sorry. This is going to write an entire contents of file as a string. So let's select it, pass the path, and also the data, which is the parameter that we are getting. And finally, once we have saved this, we need to specify the encoding file system. Remember that we are dealing with base 64, so we can select it here. And once we have done that, we can simply return the path so that we can use this path to play the audio later. So I'm going to return the path. Hit save. And of course, we need to export this function. So let's say export here. All right, and let's go back to the app. In the app here, we can simply say await write async, write audio to file. We are going to pass the audio data. And remember, guys, that this function is going to return the string or the path. So we can just grab this path in a variable. Okay, cool. So everything looks that it's working at this point. We have the path. Once we have the path, we want to actually play this sound right away so that the user doesn't need to wait too much. So what I want to do here is just say await play from path. But now this is going to be another play audio. This is going to be another function. So this function play from path is going to be another utility function. So let's go ahead and say play from path.ts. And let me just copy this name. Okay, this is going to be a function. So let's say export async. Export the name. This is going to be a constant. And then async arrow function. Okay, and this is going to grab the path as parameter. The path is going to be a string. And what we want to do here is actually access or use the audio from Expo. Now, if you remember, we can import audio from Expo AV. So let's say audio from Expo AV. And let's put this inside a try catch because this is going to be async. And if we have an error, I'm just going to put it on the console. Okay, so inside here, I want to say const sound object. And the reason for that, it's because we need to create a new instance of this audio sound. Okay, so that we can access methods like await sound object dot load async. So this is going to load basically media from the source, and the source is going to be a URI, and it's going to be the path that we are passing as parameter. Okay, and then what we want to do once we have this loaded, it's just another await and say object.play async. So this is going to just play the audio. And yeah, so that's it for this function. Let's go back here and just call this function by saying play from path, passing the path, and let's await for this. All right, and finally, guys, we want to actually just destroy the recognizer because at this point we have, we have sent that message to ChatGPT. ChatGPT has responded, and we don't want to, have that information again. So we can call this destroy recognizer. And this is going to basically reset everything here. And yeah, so once we have that, if you pay attention, we are not actually using this blob. We are just setting up the reader. And then what we can do after we set this reader here, we can say reader dot read as data URL, and we pass the blob here. So this should be working at this point. If we have an error, we're going to put it on the console. But basically, what we are doing here is just super easy. We are just, we're putting these functions everywhere so that it's not very complicated to read this function. First of all, we are validating that we have a message to send. If we do have a message, we are going to create this post request to our backend that we haven't created yet. We pass the message, and then the file reader is going to start once we have this blob from the response. So we grab the blob, we grab the base 64, which is the data. We save it to the files in the device, and then we grab it from there and play it. After we play it, we destroy the last message that the user recorded, and then we just call this read as data URL, passing the blob. this is going to just do this. Okay, and that's it, guys. So once we call this again, we should be able to just redo the same over and over again. So now what we can do is just go down here and enable this handle submit. And what we can do down here is just say await play from path, and we pass a URL path. So we don't have the URL path here, but we can create, like, for example, a variable to hold this. So let's go back all the way here. And what I want to do is just create this URL path that is going to contain the path to the last message. And now what I want to do is grab the file from the local storage so that we are able to play this even though the user can close the application and then come back. So let's create a function called list files. This is going to be an async function. We are not going to pass anything as parameter. And now what I want to do here is say try catch. This is going to be an async function. So if we have an error, if I can write here, we're going to put it in the console. So let's grab the result equal to await, and we're going to be using the file system from Expo, read directory async. This is going to return whatever we have on the file system. So we need to pass the file URL, which is the document directory. And then this might be undefined, but I'm going to put an exclamation point. Okay, and of course now we have this error because I haven't provided an unpress here. But what I want to do here is just validate that if we have actually some results here. So I can say result.length. This is going to be an array. If this is greater than 0, what I want to do is grab the file name. That is going to be add results at position 0. And then grab the path from that. The path is going to be file system document directory plus the file name. Okay, and then we can set this URL to this URL path variable that we have here. And then what we can do is just grab this URL path variable and reutilize it here as a path. Now we need to make this async and hit save. Now everything is going to work just fine. And what I want to do now is actually, once we have this path, we can play the audio and also set this path to the URL path variable that we have here, so that we can play last message as soon as we get this file. Let's hit save, and I think that's all we need for this application. We should be able to record a message now once we press this, and as soon as I release, we are going to call this handle submit, which is going to send the result of the recognition, grab the file, save it, and play it. Now we need to start creating the backend in order for this to work. And also we need to create some configuration before we, and also we need to have some configuration on Google Cloud, create a project, enable text-to-speech API, and also create an account on OpenAI, and also create an API key so that we can make requests. So let's go ahead and start with the backend. Okay guys, so let's continue with the backend. The first thing that I want to do, it's going to be install NestJS CLI. So this is a CLI that we can use with NestJS, which is really nice. And we have commands to create a project like this one that we have here. So let's go ahead and install this globally by running this command on the terminal. So I'm going to put this out of the way so we can see. And I already have it, but I'm just going to run this again. Once you have the NestJS package installed, we can actually start using this CLI and create this backend project. All right, so now I can say Nest version, for example, and you can see that I have the version 10. So I'm going to clear my terminal, and here in the desktop, I'm going to create a new Nest application by running the command nest new. And then the project is going to be Talk GPT Backend. Okay, and now this is really nice. They are asking me what package manager I want to use, and I want to use Yarn in this case. So let's select it. And this is going to installing the dependencies, and it's going to install all the things, and it's going to come with some API routes and some configuration that we can actually use, which is really nice. Now, if this is the first time that you are seeing NestJS, don't worry. I'm also not an expert on the backend field, but I was able to build this project and also deploy it to to and I was able as well to deploy it to Heroku, which is really nice to me. And yeah, so it's not really hard. You're going to see in a moment. All right, and now the application is ready, as you can see here. We can now access this Talk GPT. Oops. We can now access this Talk GPT folder, and then we can open this on Visual Studio Code. So let's do that. Okay, guys, and this is how a NestJS application looks like. As you can see here, we have controllers, modules, and services. We have this app.module controller and all that. Basically, this is like the endpoint that we have at this point. And let's try to run this. If I run the command nest, I think I can say dev. Nope. Okay, let me close this. Let's go to the package JSON. You are going to see that we have this start dev. Okay, so I can say yarn start dev, I think. Okay, and now we have an error because I have my other backend running. Let's try to run this again. Okay, now it's running. So to test this out, let's go to the Explorer. And I think this is going to be on localhost 3000. All right, then there we have it. So this is working. This hello world, it's coming from this API service. We also have this module, which basically is like declaring the controllers and providers. The app controller is going to be like the handler for this hello. As you can see here, this is the get request that we are creating called get hello. And yeah, so let's build on top of this. Now, another thing that I want to mention is that if we go to codewithbeto.dev, let me make this smaller so that we can see. I have here some dependencies that we're going to be using. The first one is going to be Google Cloud, text-to-speech, OpenAI, .env eCourse. .env is optional if you want to just try this out on your local machine. You can just put your credentials directly. So what I want to do here is actually first, before we can go ahead and install these dependencies. So I'm going to just copy this and paste it here. I'm going to stop the server, clear the terminal, and install these dependencies. All right. So now I want to go to Google Cloud website here. So, and as you can see here, I have already this Talk GPT project, but let's go ahead and create a new one so that you can see how it's done. If you click on new project, let me make this a little bigger. This is going to be tutorial GPT. Okay. So this tutorial GPT, it's going to be like my project for Google Cloud, and I'm going to hit create. This is going to start generating this tutorial project on Google Cloud. And this should take like a couple seconds, and then we can select this project. Now, if you pay attention up here, I have now this tutorial GPT project. Now, what I want to do here is just search for text to speech and then hit enter. And now you can see that we have this API here that says cloud speech to text and also text to speech, which is the one that we want, right? If we want to change speech to text, we can use this one. But in this case, we want to change text to speech. So let's select this one. I'm going to close this alert here and enable this API into this tutorial GPT project. So this is going to take a couple seconds. So let's wait a little bit. All right, and that's it, guys. All right. Now we need to create some credentials, as you can see, in order for us to be able to connect to this service from our backend. Now let's select here, create credential. And I'm going to make this a little smaller so that we can see a little better. Which API are you using? In this case, it's going to be text to speech. So let's just leave that like that. Then what data will you be accessing? In this case, we can say data belonging to your own applications, such as App Cloud Firestore. I think here we can select application data. We don't need like the user to consent in this case. Are you planning to use this API with Compute Engine? Nope. Next. And then service account details, display name. So in this case, it's going to be GPT, for example. In this, I'm going to say tutorial, and then this is going to be the ID. Service description, this is optional, so I'm just going to hit create and continue. All right, grant the service account access project. I'm going to select owner. I think I can say here, nope, this is optional. Yeah, so let's just hit continue, I guess. Yeah, I think we can just leave this as owner, or maybe current user, owner. Yeah, so let's continue. Now we have show inherit permissions. Okay, let's close this here and hit done. All right, now if we go to credentials, you are going to see that we have this here. So I'm going to select it. Okay, guys, now I'm going to select this service account that I have here. And here, let's select keys. All right, and let's add a key, create a new key. And here, this is important. We're going to select JSON and hit create. All right, and as you can see here, now I have this key, which is a JSON file in my files. Let's close this. And if I bring my my files, this file, guys, it's going to be like the credentials that we need to connect to this service. So let's go ahead and go back to the code. And here, what I want to do is just drag and drop these credentials to my folder into the backend. Of course, you want to be careful with these credentials. So I want to close this. Of course, I'm going to be deleting this, but this is just a file that contains your credentials, and it's going to look something like this. Yeah, so now I'm going to close my files. Now that we have here, this is like the API key that we're going to be using to connect to Google Cloud. So let's go back to Google. That's all we need. Once we have this key, we can use this service from the backend application. So let's go back to the, let me make this smaller. Let's go back to the APIs and servers. Yeah, so here we are in the dashboard, and we're going to see like the usage of the API when we start using it. Now let's go to OpenAI website. We're going to need to create an account as well as developers. And once you have done that, what we can do is just go to the manage account, no, view API keys. So if I do zoom here, let's click on view API keys. And here you're going to need to generate one of these if you don't have one already. I have a lot of keys, as you can see here, but you cannot reutilize the same one. As you can see here, if you lose this key, you need to create a new one by clicking this button. But I'm going to be using the same one that I have already, but you need to create one if you don't have one already. So copy the key, and yeah, so you're going to be good to go. Now, once you have your key for OpenAI, we're going to be able to use their modules. So let's go back to the Talk GPT backend project. At this point, we have the Google Cloud project and also the OpenAI account. And what I want to do now is going to be create a new .env file. And this .env file is going to contain my credentials. The first one is going to be Google application credentials. And the second one is going to be OpenAI API key. So here you're going to paste your key that is going to look something like this. And then you're going to paste here the route to this file that contains our credentials to Google, okay, to Google Cloud. In my case, it's going to look something like this. So let me just copy the route and paste it here. Basically, I'm putting the route from users, beto, desktop, test, backend. In this case, it's going to be Talk GPT backend, and then the name of the file, which is this one. Oops, and I just show you my credentials, but I'm just going to copy this. I don't really care because I'm going to delete this project anyway. So if you want to look at the credentials, they are going to look something like this. And yeah, so let's just close this out and just paste this name here. So basically I'm putting the route to this JSON file. And now we can use these credentials with this environment variable. So let's hit save, close, and let's keep moving. The next thing that I want to do, it's going to be go to the main TS file. And here I want to configure my environment variables that I just create. So we can say config from .env. Remember that we installed this dependency. So now we can simply call this config here. And this is going to grab our environment variables and it's going to make them available to us. Now we can hit save. Now, one thing to notice, guys, is that here we are listening to the port 3000. And this is fine for development, but when you are going to deploy this, we can change this to be port so that this is going to grab another port when it's on a deploy production environment, and so that you don't have an error. Yeah, and when we are developing, we're going to be using this 3000, but when you deploy, you can define your port on your servers. For example, on Heroku, you can set your port there, and then you can grab it from the environment variables. All right, so that's all I want to do here. Now let's start creating the handler for this. Let's go ahead and create the first one, which is going to be the GPT. So let's follow this structure that we have here, right? Let's create a GPT. In this case, it's going to be service. All right, so the service is going to be gpt.service.ts. And this is the file, guys, that is going to be handling the logic and the conversation with ChatGPT. So let's close the Explorer for now. I'm going to start by importing an injectable. Then we're going to need some things from OpenAI. So I'm going to say from OpenAI. And now let's go ahead and create this injectable. All right, and this injectable is not the one that I want here. Okay, injectable. And here what we want to do is export this class. This is going to be a class called chat service. And now what I want to do here is going to be declare some variables. So private OpenAI. And then I'm going to import OpenAI API. Okay, guys, so we are going to start by importing OpenAI from OpenAI. So let's say OpenAI, and this is going to be actually just OpenAI like that. And now we can use this to initialize a new instance of OpenAI. And this is going to be uppercase, of course. And this is going to take our API key. So we can grab that from process.env. In this case, let's go to the end file and grab this variable, return here and paste it here. All right, now we can use this to start with the conversation with ChatGPT. So So first of all, inside this class, we're going to have a constructor, and also we are going to have some variables. The first one is going to be the conversation. So this is going to be a private variable, and I'm going to say conversation. And this conversation basically is going to be an array of messages. So conversation history. Now here we are going to have the role. And for these, we can use, I think, OpenAI. Well, the role is going to be a string, and then we have the content, which is going to be a string as well. So the role basically is going to be between assistant, which is ChatGPT, well, the system, and also the user. And then the content is going to be the message. So we want an array of this. So what I can do is just say that this is going to be an array equal to an empty array. All right. And then inside the constructor, I'm going to actually put this configuration inside the constructor and hit save. Now I'm going to and actually what I can do here is create another variable, private OpenAI, which is going to be OpenAI like that. And then here in this constructor, what I want to do here, it's going to be just say this dot OpenAI, and then assign this configuration to this instance of OpenAI. All right. Okay, so we have this instance and then the array of messages. Now let's start by creating a new method after this constructor. This is going to be an async, and I'm going to name this chat with GPT. We're going to grab a content, which is a string, as parameter. And here we can say conversation history. We're going to start pushing this to the history. So I'm going to say push. Role is going to be, in this case, user. And the content is going to be whatever we are getting here. All right. So let's hit save. Okay, this is working fine. Now, after this, what I want to do is say chat completion. And we are going to pass this conversation to ChatGPT. So let's say await this OpenAI, create or chat, sorry. And the chat, let me see. No. .chat .completions.create. And here we can specify the messages. So the messages are going to be the array of the conversation history that we have here. So we can pass this just by saying this dot conversation history. And just as an example, I'm going to copy this here. Well, let's just say that this is going to be the conversation history, and then we can specify the model. And the model is going to be 3.5 turbo, which I think is the cheapest one. Let's hit save. Now, yeah, so the messages, guys, it's going to be an array, right? This is going to be an array. And we can say, like, preload some messages here. For example, let's say row equal to system in this case, which is going to be ChatGPT. And the content is going to be, you know, something that you want to preload. For example, you are a helpful assistance, okay? And then comma and everything else. So we can spread this conversation here. Now here we have an error that says that no overload matches this call, which means that role string is not assignable to a create completion request message. And I think we can fix this by declaring this here. And maybe we can import this from OpenAI. So this is going to be like an interface that is going to declare the chat completion request. And then we can reutilize this here. So here, maybe. Okay, guys, and here I have an error because we have said that this was going to be of type string, but this could be actually function or user, system, or assistant. And what I want to do here is actually just hard code these options here. And let's see if that's going to remove this error. Okay, so yeah, that fixed the error. Now it's complaining because we are not using this chat completion. So yeah, so let's keep moving on. Now what I want to do next, here we are just training the model, right? And then we are going to be appending all the requests or messages that we are sending from the front end. And this is going to be saved in this array. Of course, when we restart the server, we are going to lose this history, and this is going to start with just one message, which is this one. But yeah, so once we have this result from OpenAI, what I want to do is say this dot conversation history, and then push the response from GPT. So I'm going to say role, in this case, is going to be assistant, and then the content is going to be equal to the chat completion data, or in this case, it's going to be, I think, choices. So chat completion dot choices, and then this is going to be an array, which is going to contain the response at the position 0, so I can access the message and then the content. So what I'm doing here is just setting adding the response of ChatGPT to the history so that we have context for the next message, right? So for example, in the demo, we were talking about Steve Jobs, and ChatGPT remembered that we were talking about Steve Jobs because we were saving the history. Okay, so now that we have this on the history, we want to actually return this. So I'm gonna say return chat completion data. Sorry, it's going to be choices at position 0 dot message dot content. So we want to send. So we want to return this content to the person who is using this chat with GPT, right? So which is using this API. We want to return just the last message. Okay, so once we have this last message, we are going to be sending it to the API of Google. So let's create, well, before we do that, let's create another file here. This is going to be gpt.controller ts. So for the controller of GPT, we need to import controller from NestJS. Then we're going to be dealing with a post request and a body. So let's import this and import the chat service, which is going to be this one. So we just created. This is like the service, like the logic. And here we can define this controller. So let's say controller, and the name it's going to be, well, the path is going to be in this case chat. And we need to export this class chat controller. And I'm going to say here a constructor with a private read-only chat service of type chat service. Okay, so let's hit save. Now let's handle the post. So I'm going to say post here. The path is going to be talk, and this is going to be an async function. So this function is going to be called talk to GPT. You can change this if you want, but we're going to get here a body. So I'm going to say body, and we want to grab the content variable from this body, and the content is going to be of type string, right? And it's going to look something like this. Now we can simply say return, and we are going to be using the service that we created, chat with GPT, which is the handler, and we need to pass the content, if you remember. So if I just pass this, everything is going to work just fine. So here, this is going to be like the handler, and the logic, we are abstracting this on the service. we are basically just calling this function from the instance that we are creating here, right? And we are passing the content that we are grabbing from the body. This is really nice. I really like this syntax. Now let's go ahead and create now the controller, the service for the speech, right? So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to create a new file here, and I'm going to name this file text-to-speech.service.ts. Let's go ahead and create text-to-speech. Instead of service, I'm going to say controller.ts in this case. So one is going to be the service, one the controller. Let's start with this service. So for talking to Google Cloud, we're going to need an injectable as well from NestJS. Then let's import text to speech client from Google Cloud. Okay. And then injectable, export this class. This is going to be text to speech client, service. And we can declare a variable private that is going to be the client of type text to speech client. Then we need to initialize this on the constructor. So let's say this dot client equal to new text text to speech client. So we are creating an instance of this this client here of the text to speech, so that we can access their methods, right? So let's create an async function here named synthesize speech. And this is going to get a request body. Okay, now this request body is going to contain a response. So we can say await this.client.synthesize speech, and we pass the request body. Then we can return the response.audio content. Alrighty, so this is the service. We are using text-to-speech. This client has this method synthesize speech, and this is going to basically receive the text and it's going to return the MP3. Okay, so this is going to be the service. Now we need to create the controller. So let's go to the text-to-speech controller. Let's start by importing the controller from NestJS. We're going to be dealing as well with a post. We're going to be getting a body and returning a response. So let's import now text-to-speech service, which is the service that we just created. We're going to be using it. And then let's import response from Express. All right, let's import now the chat service. We're going to be using the chat in this handler. Let's create a controller here. The path is going to be text to speech. And finally, let's export this class. I'm going to name text to speech. In this case, it's going to be controller. And let's call the constructor here. We are going to be dealing with some private read-only variables, which is text-to-speech service. And this is going to be text-to-speech service. Then we also have, this is private. I can duplicate this. And in this case, it's going to be chat service. So here we are just initializing the services. And now we can access these values. I need to open curly braces here. Now let's handle the post request. The path is going to be synthesize And let's create this async function, synthesize. Okay, so we're going to have a body with a text, and this text is going to be of type string. Then we are going to be returning a response. This response is going to be of type response from Express, as you can see. We are importing it here, right? And finally, we can have a try catch. In the case that we have an error, just want to put it on the console for now. And now we can actually start handling this request to Google. In this case, I'm going to say GPT response. First of all, we need to grab the GPT response, right? So the GPT response is going to come from the chat service. So we can say chat service.chat with GPT, and we are going to pass the text. Once we have this response, we can create the audio version, right? Now, before we do that, we need to create some parameters for this request. So I'm going to call this constant request. And then we need to specify some things like the input. And here's going to be the GPT response.content. Sorry, .response, I think it's the only thing that this is the message that we're returning here. Here. If you remember, we are just returning the last message. So we are grabbing that message here. Yeah, let me close this. So we're gonna be grabbing this message here. This is the content, the ChatGPT response. Then we need to specify a voice. This is a really cool feature that we can use with text-to-speech API. We can specify things like the language, also the gender and the name. You can learn more about these options on the documentation. But yeah, so I'm going to select that I want a female, and this is the name, and the language is going to be United States English. Then we can say configuration like the encoding type. In this case, we need to handle an MP3 file. So this is going to be inside the request that we're going to be creating. Now that we have these settings, we can say audio content, and this is going to be equal to await this.text-to-speech synthesize speech, and this is going to take the request body. So let's pass this request, and now we can actually access this audio content. And what I want to do here is just return it to the client. The way we do that is going to be just saying rest. We set the headers of audio MPEG, and then set this content, right? And this is all we need to do. In the case that we have an error, we can have something like status 500 and then passing the error and change this to be error, put this on the console, and yeah. But this is basically what we need to do. But now there's another thing that we need to do before we are actually done. So I'm going to close this, and then I'm going to be redirecting myself to the main.ts, sorry, to the app module, this one. And here we are handling the app controller and app service, but we're not going to be using those. We're going to be using the text-to-speech controller. And also we're going to be using for providers the text-to-speech service and also the chat service. So these are the classes and handlers that we did, and we need to add them here so that we have access to them. Let's wait a little bit, and now this is running, and we can actually start making requests to this backend from the front end. Now, one thing to notice, guys, is that because I'm gonna be creating the request from the React Native application, instead of saying that I'm gonna be pointing to the local host, I want to say that I'm gonna be pointing to my IP address. Now I'm not gonna be showing you that, but yeah, just as a reminder. So let's leave this server here. I'm going to bring my front end. Okay, guys. So if you remember, here I am in the front end code. We have this fetch audio function that is handling this, this request. And here I'm putting the Expo public endpoint, which in the background is going to look something like HTTP, then / localhost 3000. But of course, I changed this for my IP address, so that's why I don't want to show this. But the path to this endpoint, if you remember, it's going to be text to speech and then synthesize. So this is how the endpoint looks. And if I go back to the backend here, let's just put it here. I'm going to make this terminal smaller. So we have this path, which is text to speech. Sorry, let me go to this text to speech. And then we have synthesize. And then we have synthesize. So that's why we are saying text to speech, synthesize. All right, this is the path that we're handling here. We are going to be passing this text. If you remember, we have this text here. We're going to grab this text on the backend and we're going to pass it to ChatGPT to get the response. We're passing it here. We get the response. We put it into the request to Google. We grab the audio from Google and we send it back to the user. That's why we are getting here. We're getting this file. Okay, so now that we have this, let's actually try to run this again. I'm going to restart the server just to make sure that everything is going to work fine. I'm going to say yarn iOS and let's wait a little bit. This is going to restart the application. All right, and let's see if this is going to work. Hello, testing. Okay. Okay, and this is going to make the request. All right, so here we have an error that says that fetch audio doesn't exist. And yeah, we didn't export this function now that I'm seeing here. So I'm going to export this. Let's go to the, let's go back here and let's import from the utilities. All right, let's see if that fixes the issue. All right, let's see what's going on here. Let's try to run this again. Testing. All right, and now we have an error here. Oh yeah, and that is because I forgot to put my API key. So I'm going to put my API key and then I'm going to come back, okay? Okay, so I'm just going to close this. All right, testing. Let's wait.
Hello, how can I assist you today?
Okay, and this is working, guys. So I was missing my credentials on the backend, but of course I don't want to show you that. But yeah, once I put my credentials, everything worked just fine. And we have these responses from ChatGPT. So maybe we can finish this video by asking ChatGPT to say a goodbye message. Hey, can you say a goodbye message for the audience? Thank you. All right, let's see if this works.
Certainly. Here's a goodbye message for you. Hey there. It's time to say goodbye for now. I wanted to express my heartfelt gratitude for the time we've spent together. Whether we laughed, shared stories, or simply enjoyed each other's company, I
Okay.
treasure those moments dearly. You've made a positive impact on my life, and for that, I'm truly grateful. Remember, our paths may diverge, but the memories we've created will always stay close to my heart. Farewell, my friend. Until we meet again, take care and may your journey be filled with joy and success.
Okay, guys, now you heard it. Please make sure that you subscribe. If you want to check out the code, go to codewithbeto.dev. If you want to truly master React Native, check out my course and also check the new React with TypeScript course. The templates, the projects, and everything that you need is going to be at codewithbeto.dev. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.